Welcome! In this series of videos, we will look at software add-ons for the PowerBasic Windows compiler. Today we will look again at the WinLIFT Skin Engine add-on from ZapSolution to enhance the look of your applications. We have previously looked at a version of WinLIFT. However, there is now a new version out which has changed its license model. WinLIFT version 7 is now available in either 32-bit or 64-bit versions as a PayPal Donate Where Win32 DLL add-on. This 32-bit will allow you to use it within PowerBasic, and that's what we're going to look at today. We're going to apply WinLIFT to one of our projects. This is the Form Runner project. The Form Runner project consists of 3 screens, and we are primarily going to be looking at the first screen today. This small application is a fairly bland form, and we're going to use WinLIFT to enhance the look of the form while maintaining its current functionality. So let's delve into the code and see what WinLIFT can do for us. This is a folder containing the code for our Form Runner application. We're going to add 2 DLLs to this folder. These are the DLLs we're going to be using for WinLIFT. That is the WinLIFT32.dll and the ZTrace32.dll. In addition, we're going to add an include file, which we'll reference within our code. That is the WinLIFT32.include file. As the purpose of WinLIFT is to use a series of skins to enhance your application, we're going to have to copy these in as well. These are held in 2 folders. The name of this particular skin is Sonny, and we also have a resource folder which can contain some images. In addition, we need one more definition file, and that is the SKS file. This is a flat text file that specifies the definition of how our skinning is going to work by referencing a series of either JPEGs or PNG files. These describe how each part of your window is going to look. And these are all inside this Sonny folder. So let's have a look at the code to see what we have to do to change the look of our application. I'm additionally going to add an icon for the application itself, as it currently does not have one. So in here, we're going to define the ZTrace DLL and also include the WinLIFT32.include file. Next, we have to look at the definition of our form. This is a function that defines all the parts within our form. So before we display our form to the user, we need to define which skin of WinLIFT we're going to be using. So we will set up a few local variables in order to populate that. WinLIFT uses Unicode. So all of these strings we're going to be setting up as wstring z. Now comes the point where we actually define and initialize the skin engine. First of all, we define the resource, which is the skin itself. This is the Sonny skin. Now we need to turn on and initialize the engine itself. So this should be the basics of skinning our window. So let's try running the application now and see what difference this has made. And as we can see, we've made quite a radical difference to our form. The form look has changed completely. We still have the existing buttons for exit and run form, and we still have the list box on the screen. However, the look of the form has changed quite radically from what it was before. So before we change this application any further, let's have a look at one of the demo applications that ships with WinLIFT. If we have a look at this buttons32.executable, this shows you what WinLIFT can actually achieve. We have a clock running at the bottom of the screen in real time. We have a number of buttons. These are all custom buttons to WinLIFT itself. And the screen is resizable. And one of the buttons has a font embedded on it. So what else can we actually do to our original form? As the form stands, it would be fully functional. However, let's add 1 or 2 more items to it. After having skinned the form, we can now attempt to add the WinLIFT clock. We're setting a variable for the resource folder. This is the folder we looked at which contains our resources, in this case the clock image. We're specifying the PNG file. We're calling a function within the WinLIFT library called clock control. We'll need to define this clock constant at the beginning of the code, which we'll do in a moment. And we're setting the anchor of the clock to the bottom of the form. This means when your form is resizable, the clock will stay at the bottom of the form when the form is resized. So let's define this constant at the beginning of the code. And we'll try running the application again. So as we can see with that one line of code, we have added clock to the bottom of our form. We don't have to add any timers, we don't have to add any special code to redraw the clock is just there. So can we enhance these buttons on the form? Let's look at that next. At the moment we have two buttons defined on the form, an exit button and a run form button. So I'm going to comment those two out in the code, and we're going to add a couple of the custom buttons that WinLIFT supports. First of all, the exit button. This uses another function within the WinLIFT library, the push button image. And if we do the same for our run form button, this will not only add the button to the form, it will place an image on the button. And you can use the constants to decide whether you want the button centered or left or right justified. So if we run our code now, we'll see we now have two new buttons. As I kept the same constant for the buttons are still functional using your existing code. All we've done is added the button to the form. Now if we turn our eyes to the list box, what I'd like to do is to make the text on the list box slightly larger, and perhaps change the colour on the text. Now these commands do not appear to have actually changed the form colours. This is because they are being controlled from the skin engine itself, using the definition file. So what I'm going to try now is to change the way that works by creating a new skin definition file. We will clone the existing one and we'll make some minor changes. So I have copied the Sony SKS file and created a Sony EX file. The purpose of these SKS files is to define both the images and certain items of each of the objects. For example, the height of the status bar and the offset for buttons. And we also can control the colours of caption text and also button text. So I'm going to make some very slight changes to these colours within this Sony EX SKS file. And I've also created a Sony EX folder to contain my images. And I've also changed the control background image. So all we need to do is to change our form so it's using the new SKS file. And if we run the code now, we will see that the look of our form has changed again. The background image is actually now sitting within the form. So we still have to make this text a little bigger. But we have managed to change the colours of the dialog title and the plain text on a label. So already our form is looking much better. So if we add a control set font command after the form has been skinned, if we try running the code now, we'll see that the text in our list box is now larger. However, when we click on it, it gets small again. So we're heading in the right direction. So what I'm going to try is, rather than creating the list box within the form definition, we're going to try creating it within the initialize dialog section of the callback function, the event handler. So we will just amend the code to take out reference to our list box. And we will also declare the font globally. And having done that, we will define our font in the pb main function. Now we've done that, we will attempt to populate our list box from within the initialize dialog function. So we're setting the style and the extended style of our list box. We're using the existing function to get the form list to populate an array, and then we're using a control add statement to add this array to our list box. And then we can set the font of the list box itself. If we try running that code now, we're now getting a list box which looks slightly better, and when we click on it, we're not getting the reduced font size. So I think we have successfully transformed our project to use WinLIFT. The functionality is still within the application to run the form, which we have not changed yet. However, in summary, what we've achieved today is we have taken a fairly bland form. If we compare this to the existing form, you'll see it looks a great deal better. We have done this with only very minor modifications to our original code, while retaining the existing functionality. We have also added a new control to the form, the clock control. We have replaced both of the existing buttons with WinLIFT's own custom buttons, which give you the ability to put graphics on the buttons themselves. Plus, we now have a background to the form. In the next video, we'll move on to cover the rest of our application. Can WinLIFT handle dynamic forms? I'll put links in the description below to where you can actually apply and donate to get WinLIFT. However, that's it for today. Thank you for watching.